very good evening to one and all present here. This evening, as part of our second campus interaction of the Podium, I'm thrilled to inform you that we have with us a personality who redefines banking brilliance. A personality who would send shivers down any aspiring banker's spine. One of those rare few personalities who has managed the sales and credit verticals of leading multinational banks with utmost ease. Ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. K.S. Ramdas, Chief Executive Officer of Janalakshmi Financial Services. Mr. Ramdas is a senior professional banker with over 3 decades of experience in Indian and international financial markets. His areas of expertise cover emerging growth companies, mid-corporates, international trading companies, and debt financing of global projects. He has a proven track record in starting de novo business verticals for banking majors and growing them into profitable and self-sustaining lines of business. Mr. Ramdas has a PGDM from IIM Ahmedabad, an MA from the Delhi School of Economics, and a BA Honours degree from Bangalore University. He was a 2-time finalist for the Rhodes Scholarship during his master's degree program and graduated with first rank from the Bangalore University. Starting his career with Bank of America in India and the Philippines, Mr. Ramdas went on to do corporate and syndicated debt financing at the National Bank of Bahrain. He joined the Chase Manhattan Group in New York in 1986, which was the start of a 17-year career with the JP Morgan Chase Group. During this phase, Mr. Ramdas held positions of increasing responsibility in corporate banking, credit audit, middle market banking, and small business investment and insurance services. He was recognized with Chase's highest award, the Excalibur, in 1992 for exemplifying its corporate values. Mr. Ramdas also customized and delivered Chase's iconic credit training system to over 120 business relationship managers in Chase's regional banking group. Mr. Ramdas rounded off his 22-year stay in the United States with the Toronto Dominion Bank as head of its flagship Mid-Atlantic Small Business Banking Group. Post that, Mr. Ramdas was recruited in an international search to join Development Credit Bank's senior management team in Mumbai. He returned with his family to India in June 2008 and served as Executive Vice President and head of the small and medium banking enterprise, which is today the premier banking business vertical of the bank. He was given additional charge of corporate banking in August 2009 and led a 75-strong relationship management team across DCP's pan-India footprint. In March 2010, Mr. Ramdas joined Janalakshmi Financial Services Private Limited, a new age bank for financial inclusion, as the CEO of the micro and small enterprise business. In just under 2 years, his team has built a scalable MSE loan sourcing model and a robust credit system, backed by an innovative use of cloud-based technology. Mr. Ramdas has once again proved his worth here by using strong MSME domain knowledge, advocacy skills, and passion in his current assignment. While in the US, he served on the boards of the United Way, India Community Center, Association of Indians in America, and the Faith Community Awareness Center. In India, he serves on the Institutional Review Board of ADAPT, formerly the Spastic Society of India, an organization dedicated to empowering differently abled youth and adults. He is an active member of the Rotary Club and Director-elect for International Service at the Rotary Bangalore Downtown Club. His club is active in the Pulse Polio program aimed at keeping India polio-free and ensuring free dialysis to the needy patients. Sir, may I now hand over the stage to you to engage the audience in an insightful and an interactive session.
Thanks, That was brilliant, wasn't it? Not what the context of it, the way he said it. I think it was very well delivered. Sort of makes you feel a little more important than you really are. And this is what I mean. You need to Okay. So the way we're going to do this is that we will, I think we have approximately 2 hours, I believe, or a little under. We'll try to keep it a little under. There's no need to, go the full distance. In case we run out of questions, we can always engage later on. No need to keep everyone here. But so what I do is I have a prepared presentation because clearly I'm coming to IIM Shillong, right? So I can't come and wing it and start talking about sports and golf and my favorite pastime and things like that. You'd be interested. So I do have a prepared presentation. We'll kind of go through it. My intent is not to stand up here and lecture to you. That really is not the intent, because I think all of you get it already. So what I'm going to do is take you through some material. Those of you who find any of that interesting, there is enough contextual stuff that I'll be talking about. Source material I'll identify, so you can always go and look it up and do that on your own time. Obviously, we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A. And at Kailash's request and the request of the committee, I'll try and also personalize this to the extent I can, and leave some time to talk about my life experiences and things of that nature, so that you walk away from here getting a sense for what I've been through, and hopefully some of that you can relate to in your personal life. Let me start off with a confession. And the confession is, I never thought after graduating from IIM Ahmedabad, oh my God, a long time ago, one of the questions you're not supposed to ask me is the year I graduated. Because then you start doing the mental math and saying, how old is this guy? And once you figure that out, you'll say, oh my God, he's actually standing at that age? Because I know how disrespectful you guys are for people who are old, right? No, not really. Okay, so one of the ground rules also we're going to try and adopt today is, I love being called Ram. That's my first name. So when you do that, you also get punya, as they say. Ram ka naam do. So saying sir and things like that, let's try to keep it informal. Let's try to keep it interactive. And, have some fun as we do this. Fair enough? Okay. So the confession was that I never thought I would actually be allowed back on any IIM campus, especially these days given the common admission test. That's what they call it, right? I mean, guys, I will be honest, I would never get through one of those if I had to take it today. So a huge round of applause to all of you for having joined us. And I do mean that very sincerely, because as I look at these tests and I talk to people, the amount of work that goes in, I mean, it's pretty stressful. And at the end of the day, you are literally one amongst, 100 of you, amongst thousands who take this test. Now, in our time, and really, it feels funny saying that, but back in my time, we didn't have common admission tests. We actually took separate tests, and there were fortunately, only 2 IIMs at the time. It was IIM Ahmedabad and Calcutta. Bangalore was sort of a dream in somebody's eye. It hadn't really come to reality yet. So it was both, and then there was Indian Institute of Foreign Trade in Delhi, which was also a pretty sought-after institution to get into. And I liked that because it was a 1-year program as opposed to the 2-year PGP, which is what it was. But, as things have it, and we'll talk about that in the later section. So I'm going to kind of zip through this. I've got a whole bunch of notes with me to help me, assist me through this. Let me again make a second confession, and that is, microfinance is something that I have I'm a Johnny-come-lately to it, meaning I've just kind of been dealing with it for about a little over 2 years. And within MFI, or microfinance institutions, I head up a vertical called Enterprise Financial Services, which is lending to micro and small enterprises. These are typically, as defined in the MSMED Act, and those of you who are interested can make a note of that and look it up. It is defined in terms of the investment. Can you hear me still? Yes. Great. It's defined in terms of the investment in plant and machinery. Okay, that's the way the government or the RBI defines the levels of thing. Internationally, there are various other cuts people take. For instance, in the United States, it's defined in terms of the number of employees in an organization. Okay, so up to 25 employees, that is considered tiny enterprises. Anything larger than 25 up to 100 is considered small, etc., medium enterprises and so on. So that is what I do, and that's been a passion with me for the last, out of my 34 years in career in banking, about the last 12 or 15 was in small, what we call in the United States, small business, and what's called internationally SME, small and medium enterprises. And I'm fond of saying this, and you're all adults, so I can use this word without apologizing. Back when SME or small business was not considered sexy, I was doing it. Okay, so it was something that I got into and just found a natural passion around, because you really could absolutely reach out, and in what you did, you helped people, and you could see the transformation in their lives. I started my career in a large corporate. I did syndicated lending, you know, all the fun stuff that you hear about Wall Street bankers. I did that, and I don't know. I don't think I was very good at it, but I, you know, plugged along. But till I found, if you will, my calling in doing this. So we'll talk about that as well in my reflections. So what I'm going to do is the first part. I'm going to talk about the context of micro finance. And I believe Kailash was telling me that some of you might have taken a half-credit course in microfinance. Was that recently? Okay, good. Oh, no, not so good, because then you'll remember what you read, right? So you'll ask difficult questions. So, however, you know, keep all the difficult questions for your professors. That's really what they are there for. So give me a break and, you know, go along and humor me, if you will. But Janlakshmi, you might say, who is Janlakshmi? We very often get mistaken with a bank called Dhanalakshmi. Okay, see a lot of heads nodding, that's not a good sign. Okay? By the end of today, I promise you, you will remember and know Janlakshmi Financial Services. We are what I call a new age microfinance company. We like to call ourselves a bank for financial inclusion. You'll hear me use this term a lot, financial inclusion. How many of you are kind of familiar with that term? I'm sure you all know what that means in English. That's a lot of hands. So that's impressive. So financial inclusion is really the context, okay? The cloth around, the weft of the warp of what we do at Janlakshmi. And it's, I'll talk a little bit about the promoter, the vision, and so on. So it's kind of interesting. Very quickly, table of contents. I'm going to talk about what is a social enterprise, our approach to it. EFS, that's my baby, Enterprise Financial Services. Talk a little bit about, put it in context of the international setting, which is what is called the missing middle. Again, by a show of hands, how many of you have heard about this missing middle concept? Not a single one, that's good. Okay, so anything I tell you, you're going to take as gospel truth. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about PSL, or priority sector lending, which again provides the overall framework. PSL, I'm sure many of you have heard about. Anyone worked in a bank before coming here for your MBA? No? Okay. Anyone worked at all in industry before coming to MBA? That's a fair number of hands. In my time, let me tell you, there were half the number in a class like this, and a lot of us were just, you know, our dads kept paying the bill and we kept studying and going on. And you know, I think you get a lot more out of an MBA program. You know, if you come with some prior work experience, I think you bring a lot to the class. So I think MBA is about learning as much from each other as it is learning from the guy, the talking head who stands. And then we're going to go forward. Okay. Very quickly, many of you attended yesterday's talk by Jyoti Bhai. He's become my new best friend. Today he and I and his wife and my wife and son went to Cherrapunji. Talking about wives, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of my wife sitting back there. Okay, the beautiful lady. We've been married, I would suspect, longer than you guys have been on this earth. We've been married since 1977. happily so. And that's my son Karthik sitting to her right. So the reason I say that is the gentleman yesterday talked about, if you recall, something called CRA, right? Corporate CSR. There I go. CSR, corporate social responsibility. All right. So now, in terms of, and I know MBA students love this. You want to know what the structure of an organization is, right? That's where it all begins. Is it a proprietorship, a partnership, a corporation? The latest thing, the newfangled concept now is something called LLPs, right? Limited liability partnerships. Yeah. So that's the topic for another day. I like those very much, and I think there's a huge future for LLPs in a place like India, which hasn't taken off yet. So on the continuum or on the spectrum, if you look at the left, the profit focus, that's the for-profit firm. That's everything we all enjoy. That's what you guys are earning your MBA for, many of you, because you want to go on and get those TCS and other jobs, and make huge sums of money for your companies, for profit. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have NGOs or not-for-profits that have what you call the purely social focus, right? So those are pretty obvious, and I won't spend a lot of time talking about those. But the ones in the center are the ones that are kind of evolving and interesting. The one to the immediate right of the for-profit firms is the firms with active CSR programs, the kind of thing that the gentleman talked about yesterday. And the thing is here, what did he say? 10% of the EBITDA is the EBITDA, whatever you call it, is the amount that is set aside. They have to show, that the use of those resources for social good and so on. Absolutely great. But can you tell me, is CSR the primary driving force of a company that does CSR? Okay, so that was an easy one, right? So it isn't, okay? It is important, but it's not the critical element. They still have to make money, because 10% of nothing is not a lot of money, right? So they have to, they've got to make money, which is the first order of business. But what I'm here to talk about is social enterprises, which excites me. Social enterprises, if you look at the second bullet, have a second bottom line. Interesting, huh? You always thought that there was just one bottom line. The expression we use is, okay, let's cut to the chase. And every time you use that expression, I would say to the bank when I worked at Chase, let's charge them a penny for it, and we'll become really, rich, because that was almost like a phrase, let's cut to the chase, or let's cut to the bottom line. Because the concept is there's one bottom line, and that is the profit-making ability. And there isn't. Actually, there is a second bottom line, which is just as important, and you measure that in terms of the positive impact. The word impact is used with a purpose. It's not intent. It is not programs. It is not a bunch of activities. It is the actual impact. So if I might sort of make the distinction, you have an activity, you have an endeavor, and the result of that endeavor is the impact. Okay, so it's not about measuring yourself in terms of what you do, but what you get or what it results in, right? So it's the customer focus. It's the whole concept of Six Sigma and all of that you study. Start with the customer first and engineer yourself backwards. Don't build it in an ivory tower and deliver it to the customer and say, I've built this terrific thing, mousetrap, buy it. Because that's when you have the disconnect. But again, I'm not a marketing sort of guy, so I'm not going to go dwell much further into it, but that's social enterprises. The reason I put this chart up, sort of the frivolous reason is it's a nice colorful chart, right? It looks very nice out there. Sort of puts a kind of a fun theme around a very serious topic, and that is that C.K. Prahlad, is so rest in peace. My professor taught me business policy for a term many years ago, and went on to do great things with a certain amount of passion and dedication, which is rare in people of following the business route. Who obviously, all of you know, wrote this, the Podium, right, at the bottom of the pyramid. Said that the bottom of the pyramid is a viable market, but needs innovative approaches. He also said in the same context, if you read the book, he talks about the Indian consumer And he says the Indian consumer, by and large, in terms of purchasing power capacity compared to major economies of the world, might be considered poor, but he's very value conscious. And international companies have lived to rue the day when they came in with what CK would have called tired policies and tired products, thinking that it works somewhere there, let's come and dump it in India. What do these Indians know? They've just now begun to be able to afford to buy these things. Let's sell them that outdated phone model, the mobile set or whatever. Or you name it, cars, for instance. The early release of cars in India from all the majors of the world were, models that had been retired, guys, years ago in the international markets. And they lived to rue the day because, the Indian consumer was value conscious. There is an ad, I'm sure many of you have seen it, which shows this major yacht, okay? And there's this, obviously an Indian with his wife, very well dressed in heels, so he's obviously, made his money, he's very wealthy, and he's walking down, and there is this salesperson who's trying to tell him all the features of the yacht, right? It's got all this, it's almost got a mini golf club and all that. And you remember this line? Yeah, what's that? That to me, by the way, I find Indian ads, I think, are the most intelligent and telling, right? Spanning from what Amitabh Bachchan does as a brand ambassador for Gujarat, right, to ads like this, which absolutely get it. So the point is, Indian consumers are very value conscious. Okay, so they're saying, what is it for me? What am I paying for? What am I getting out of this? So his concept was, stop following the tired practices and sort of discarding the bottom of the pyramid, saying that there isn't much there. Can they really afford my product? It's about, can your products be tailor-made to make sure that they have a need for it, and if they have a need for it, boy, they're going to blow the doors off in terms of returning the thing and making you profitable. So microfinance is one such byproduct, if you will. I just wish CK were still alive to see how far microfinance in India has come. I'm sure all of you who've done your half credit courses would remember that most people credit the Grameen Bank of your neighboring, Bangladesh, Mohammed Yunus, right, with having started the microfinance movement. Do you think that's true? It isn't, right? Where do you think microfinance began? Sorry? Seva, right. It started here, guys. It started here in India. It was NABARD. Okay, don't ask me for the expansion. I can never get my tongue around, but you all know what NABARD is. Okay, National Bank for Infrastructure. And NABARD was the one that, along with the self-help groups, the concept of the self-help group as opposed to joint liability, and we can get into that little discussion, but I won't, was the one. So this was the pioneer of the microfinance movement. What Grameen did was it gave a lot more legitimacy and it brought a lot of transparency. They brought a lot of processes and all of that, which is what I'll talk about Janlakshmi, which I'm very proud about, because we are defining a different type of microfinance institution in a jungle that's out there. Okay, and we're doing this one brick at a time. We're using technology, we're using superior people, resources, we are using obviously old tried and tested hands like myself in a small way, being a little immodest. A lot of us in that management have grey hair. That's a qualification, by the way. Either you have no hair or grey hair, you qualify. You can work for Janlakshmi senior management. But Ramesh Ramanathan, our promoter, look him up. Some of you might have seen a movie called Swadesh, right? And it said that Shah Rukh Khan played. It's Ramesh Ramanathan's life sort of depicted in a movie. He and his wife Swati, who came back, he was head of the derivatives desk in UK for Citibank. Made tons of money. The guy was very, very successful. Went to Vince Bellani, then went to Yale for his management. But he came back and he said, listen, I need to do something. Talked to a lot of people, talked to a company, an institution called Mirada in Karnataka, okay, who had started a microfinance company called Sanghamitra. which had both a rural and an urban arm. So, so he bought that over and did that. So microfinance is one of those that goes into basically it's unsecured lending to a group of people that you would think are absolutely not credit worthy. And that's been proven totally wrong. So now typically for management students, this is a wonderful chart because you say, what are the key decisions that need to be taken in starting up something, right? You heard the speaker yesterday. I acknowledge the presence of Hi. I don't know how you can put up with me after we spent the whole day today traveling around. We went to Cherrapunji with his lovely wife, and he's here to listen to me speak. But as he was saying yesterday, remember the brothers when they said, "Go ahead and we'll give you one of the licenses for a petrochemical." What is the first thing they do? What's the first question they ask? You were all listening, so that's very good. So the first question is, the basic thing is, how do we set this up? Yeah, it's a great concept. We want to do this, but how do we go about it? Who are our customers? How's the market? Structure, very, very important, especially in a country like India. And especially when you're dealing with small loans to what you call the underserved, the so-called disenfranchised people. Okay? Your motives, regardless of how honorable they might be, can always be suspect. Because you work in that very gray area where people are not very sophisticated, so there's always a concept that we're taking somebody for a ride. So the structure is very important. Capital, of course, no business can work without capital. You either fund it yourself, and there's certain limitations to how much you can fund yourself. And you have to, you all understand the concept of financial leverage, I'm sure, right? So that's the third issue. And the fourth is, of course, employees. Institutions are all about people and who you employ and how committed and passionate they are. And it's, again, in this vertical, it's all very important about how transparent and honest and with integrity are they. Okay, because again, you're dealing again with the so-called poor. And please keep count of the number of times I use the word POOR, because I'm going to swear not to use it. I'm going to use the word underserved because I don't think poor is a very relative concept. Okay, what is it? Economic poor? Is it culturally? Is it emotionally, or spiritually poor? So let's not get into that. So underserved is really a better term. So what did Ramesh and his cohorts do? Actually, it was him and his wife really. They said the first thing we need to do is take away any semblance of a conflict of interest between me as a promoter of this company and the outcome of the company. All right. So given that, and by the way, it was then and in India today, and I repeat this, it was then and in India today the only example of a microfinance institution that is structured in the way I'm going to describe to you. Okay, and it's very significant. And that is, we are structured in a two-tier structure. Okay, there is a for-profit company called Janlakshmi Financial Services Private Limited. That's whom I work for. All right, that's a typical for-profit NBFC, now an NBFC MFI, if some of you know the distinction, right? Post the Malaga. We do everything for a profit. In fact, when I was invited to come here, my MD CEO, who is very cost-conscious guy, great guy. He was also 1 year junior to me at IIM Ahmedabad. So I keep reminding him of that. So I said, I can still pull rank. And so was another famous lady. I'm going to mention a couple of names because when you get to as old as I am, you sometimes want to be surrounded by famous people. And a number of people I studied with, and I was studying the lunch, have gone on to do great things. Rama Japurkar, does the name ring a bell? Yeah, Rama Japurkar is India's probably most famous thought leader. She's the author of a book called We Are Like That Only. Look it up and get it if you haven't read it. And she's just a marketing guru. She's a genius. She was a year junior. So Radhakrishnan, who's my MD CEO, was her classmate. And he said to me when I met him for the first time, he said, Ram, I was 1 year behind you in the institute. You remember Rama, you don't remember me. So I said, but you're not a pretty girl. Which Rama was. So But Radha has never forgiven me for that. So when he said, you're going for this trip, he says, who's going to pay for it, Ram? He said, remember, we are a microfinance company, so, you know, forget that you were at JP Morgan and stuff, so let's make sure. I said, no, don't worry about it, you know, it's all taken care of. But that's what we are. We are a very profit-driven, profit-conscious company. We do everything with a bottom line, and I'll talk about how we measure ourselves. But then we have a not-for-profit Section 25, very important. It's not an NGO, it's not a trust. Okay, it's a Section 25 company. Please look it up if you're not familiar with that structure. And that's what the promoters' shareholding shares in Janlakshmi Financial Services is held in that Section 25 company, and it's held in that company for perpetuity. That is forever. Okay, so when we formed the structure, when Ramesh formed it, he actually went to the RBI and said, this is the structure I want to have in place. Then they said, listen, remember, once you put it in a Section 25, you can't take it out. You can dissolve a trust. You can unwind an NGO. All that can happen, right? But a Section 25, which is under the ROC rules, you can't basically do it without changing, without going a whole rigmarole. So it took a couple of years, in fact, to get the structure approved. But having done that, and today being the only MFI in the country with that structure, gives us bragging rights, if you will, to use a colloquial term, or it gives us the sort of the moral high ground. Okay, when you talk about the AP crisis, when you talk about all the allegations, accusations of, you know, usurious lending and high interest rates and this, that, and the other, it gives you the moral high ground to say, but, you know, the promoter does not benefit from any of this. And, you know, and in perpetuities, because all the money, all the dividends, and if ever there was an IPO, and at some point there will be, I'm sure, the monies that would accrue to the promoter as a result of a share would actually go into JSS, which has a defined set of you know, projects and purposes for which the money has to be used. So it is a unique structure. We're very proud of it. And then, of course, as a social enterprise, besides obviously the profit motive, we get measured on a bunch of things. Okay, progress out of poverty index, something called the GIIRS rating. It is they come around and you volunteer for it. It's a very rigorous, it's an international organization where they look at your people, processes, technology, the whole shebang. They interview customers, they do all of that. Okay, they give you a rating. We, of course, are CRISIL rated. We are an MFR 3, soon to be hopefully, knock on wood, an MFR 2. We are part of something called MFIN, if you've heard of that term, Microfinance Institutional Network, okay, which is a self-regulating, self-governing body, and it's a loosely formed association of the major microfinance institutions. We are a very active member of that. We have voluntarily signed up for a code of conduct with these and so on. And clearly, MF Transparency is another rating. Okay, I like pictures, okay, rather than words. And to me, this was a thing that I drew when I first got into Janlakshmi 2 years ago. And I had to tell somebody what I did. And I said, okay, let's look at financial exclusion, which is the flip of inclusion, and say, what are the major areas of exclusion in urban India? I want to just fast forward a little bit. We are an urban microfinance company. Let me sort of, in the truth of disclosure, we do not do rural or semi-rural microfinance. We are purely urban. But then again, folks, literally 36% of the population of India, 1.1 billion, is urban, and fully 30% is quote-unquote underserved. Okay, I'm pretty good. I didn't use that word, right? The P word. Okay, so we said, what are the exclusions? We said they're typical. You wouldn't have heard this because it goes back to Indira Gandhi's time when she was, you know, running for election, and it was a tough election. She came up with a slogan: "Roti, kapda, aur makan." Aapne suna? Some of you heard that, right? And it's like the roti, kapda, makan, right? It's makan, it's housing. If you look around you, the urban underserved are woefully lacking in terms of you know, livable housing. You know, the kind of housing they live in is you know, it's pretty pathetic. Housing is one. Clearly, personal credit. Personal credit meaning things like you know, for Consumption purposes like education, weddings in the family, medical expenses. What is the single most, if you look at the research and the survey and the statistics, the single largest reason, primary reason for small enterprises, I'm not talking about families, enterprises to fail is the unexpected medical expense that comes up for a family member. Okay, because we are not either a fully welfare society where we're providing free medical attention to people, nor are we an insurance buying kind of country like the United States. So that is one. So clearly there is that, loans that need to be taken for it. Savings. You'll see a chart later on. It says that 6 out of 10 Indians in urban markets, and I'm sure even in rural today it's coming up, own a mobile phone. 6 out of 10, right? I think in mobile telephony, India has vastly leapfrogged most of the European and Western countries, right? I mean, the kind of models you get here and the ease with which you can communicate is just amazing. 6 out of 10, but only 3 out of 10 have a bank account. And what does a bank account do? You think, what is the big deal? I mean, what does it do? It's empowerment. Bank accounts are empowerment. Just think about it, especially when it comes to women folk. Their ability to control, right? Put away a little bit of the savings, stash it away for a rainy day, is something that transcends just the economic desire. It's a very basic human desire to say that I control my life because I control the money that I earn, and I can choose to do what I wish to do with it. So those are the 4 major exclusions, and of course business loans, and that's a topic I'll come to. And what you see in the gold there are the Janakshmi solutions. We have a solution for each of those. Personal credit is our MFI business. Savings we have tied up. Some of you might have heard of something called the business correspondent model that the RBI has espoused for MFIs to partner with commercial banks and offer no-frill savings accounts. Okay, where we act as, if you will, the direct selling agents. So we go source the account, we service it, and remember we also walk the last mile, i.e. we go out and every week we collect 50 rupees or 100 rupees from the customers who have the savings account, and then we put it into the bank. We actually don't put it physically because we have technology that enables us to kind of on the front end do it. And that's some of the amazing things that we'll also talk about. This is just another view. Many of you might have heard of a professor called Raghuram Rajan. Yeah, so Raghuram Rajan is amazingly famous. He wrote a book called The Fourth Lines. Yeah, if you haven't read it, I highly recommend that before placement time. That's a good thing for you to do. Professor Raghuram Rajan is the professor of finance at Chicago Booth, and he's also, more importantly, he was the chief economic advisor to the Prime Minister, Manmohan Singh, who himself is an amazing economist, right? So that is Professor Rajan's kind of schematic of what a financial inclusion picture in its entirety should look like. And I'm happy to say that our approach is in providing, a 360-degree financial approach to the urban underserved. Okay, so we have something around savings accounts, buffer savings, etc., credit and income enhancements in terms of the kind of loans we provide, and then there's also wealth creation. Now, don't be shocked. Don't believe for a moment that just because somebody is underserved and is a daily wage earner, they don't have dreams or visions about propagating or developing wealth. They do, and so there are different ways in which we can serve that. That was one of the stats that I mentioned, the 6 out of 10 and the 3 out of 10. We won't get into a lot of this, except to say that that's kind of a little bit of an eye chart, and I'm sorry I put it up there because people in the back, I don't think can read it. But essentially, let me just read that and say the process of ensuring access to financial services and timely and adequate credit when needed by vulnerable groups, which is another nice word instead of the P word, such as weaker sections and low-income groups and at an affordable cost. That was Professor C. Rangarajan, again an IMA professor who taught me macroeconomics when we were studying there. Coming to capital, remember that earlier chart saying structure? We talked about structure. It's about capital. So if you say Ram, so what is it? Ramesh put all his money. Did he make that much money as a derivatives trader for Citibank that he was able to fund this? No, he put in the seed money. And then, of course, we were able to go out and take this on the road. What you don't see on this list are a number of famous names that initially came in as, if you will, almost like the angel investors or the early investors, and then they exited at certain points in time. One of them is the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation. They were there. We counted them as one of our private equity players. This is a group called GAWA. It's a European group that's recently, just 2 weeks ago, concluded an 80 crore capital injection in our company. This is Citi Venture Partners. Okay, this is, many of you would know about them. Bellwether is a sort of a PE, a fund that has got the social impact objective at its core. And it's a gentleman by the name of Prasad. If you've read about, again, your MF, he's in Andhra Pradesh, and he's just an icon in microfinance. Low Capital, again, is it's Ganesh Ramaswamy is his name. It's another company that does that. And Treeline is a Hong Kong-based. Those are some of our major private equity investors. And besides them, we have people like Narayan Ramchandran, who is the ex-head of Morgan Stanley for Asia. He is both an investor and director. He was so moved by what he saw and the story he heard. But he's a very pragmatic banker. Morgan Stanley guys, they don't get more profit conscious than Morgan Stanley, right? He's come in and put in money in the company, and he's occupying a board. We have Rama on our board, Rama Bijapurkar. We have S.P. Mathur, who is ex-chairman of LIC on our board. We have, it's a very, very impactful board. I've had the privilege of going to board meetings to talk about my business and present, and the kind of questions they ask is really, beyond the formalities. It really gets into the business itself. So it's kind of, it's a challenge. So let's put it that way. Now the sort of the diagram here, very quickly, just tells you that historically, you all heard about the Grameen model, right, which was a donor-supported model. And all it says is, in order to get to kind of a hurdle rate of 6 million customers, it took Grameen and that model about 30 years to get there. Okay, using a private equity supported and a VC or private equity supported model, a company like SKS, all heard of SKS, right? Andhra Pradesh, got there in 6 years. Right. So and of course the VCs made multiples of several tens of multiples of their initial investment. So for all purposes, all I'm trying to say here is that this is not a business that is needs to be done only by people over 40 like me. Notice that you're not smiling, so that's good. So you're saying I'm closer to 40 than I'm to 60. But the point is, at various stages, so your passion could be all about using market-driven commercial practices, but put it into a socially relevant, socially viable thing. The MFI industry is a great thing. I'm not pitching Jan Lakshmi necessarily, but all I'm saying is, look at it, think about it, because clearly this field is burgeoning. The opportunities are just growing in leaps and bounds, thanks to the RBI and Malagam and all of that stuff. In fact, companies like us look at the AP crisis as a blessing in disguise. It's a good thing that happened. The excesses, we talked yesterday, again, the speaker talked about when you have to let go stress, right? What happens at the Jamnagar plant, right? When they open up the thing and the fumes are set to light. Similarly, there was so much pent up pressure of the wrong kind that was building up in this industry that what happened with the AP crisis and beyond. But that again, we could take it either as a Q&A or talk about it another time. So that's the other thing that happened. Okay. I'm glad I don't have the timeout signal yet from Kailash. But Kailash, as I promised you, I tend to get carried away. So, the thing about technology, and I'm sure many of you with an IT background and stuff, you say, really, Ram, do you think you can, what kind of technology really would an MFI company do, And I would tell you, cutting edge, absolutely cutting edge. The first MFI, probably only 3 in the country, to have adopted something called the core banking system. Again, many of you know that as CBS. If you've heard of FlexQ, that's the system we use. It is state of the art. We invested in it in a time when it was not popular. People, Bandhan, you've heard of Bandhan? Yeah? Bandhan has offices here in Shillong. Bandhan is a company that is the largest at this point in time. They did 6,300 crores of dispersals of loans of the 10 to 25,000 ticket size. Can you imagine the number of loans they must have made to do 6,300 crores? Is a company that absolutely works on with very minimal technology. So I'm not going to stand up here and say technology is the only way to go, but that is the way we chose to go. And we think that that's the way we can ramp up and make it economically sustainable. So we use a bunch of things like CPS. We have Fino, through a company called Fino, we use a biometric smart card for all of our enrollment. Remember folks, all of this is done in cash. This business is not what you would think. You don't pull out a credit card and swipe it at an ATM and draw money, or we don't put money into a bank account. These people, remember, 3 out of 10 only have bank accounts. So this is all about handing over cash, taking cash payments in the form of their EMIs. So all of that is cash. So if you have people in the front end, and these are not women. 100% of our microfinance customers, as you all know, are women, right? These are women who are working. These are women who have occupations. So they don't have time to leave their work and come to a branch of Janlakshmi to make their, payments. We do monthly collections. We don't do weekly collections. We do monthly collections. We do it at their place of work. We walk the last mile. We go and see them where they are. We meet with them. All we require is when they make the payment, they have their biometric smart card with them and they swipe it in a handheld device and it automatically connects, through GPRS system into your core banking thing, and it's instantly updated. A receipt is produced, printed and given to them, and it's all above board. And then we have limits of cash that the collection person can carry in their hands by the end of the day. And if it crosses a certain amount, they have to, regardless of what time it is, 8:30, 9 o'clock, walk into the branch or call the branch manager, go to their house, and branch manager have limits, area managers have limits, etc., etc. But the key important thing is when cash is being handled, taken away, it is all being done above board and with receipts and printed receipts. It's biometric, so the person paying it is actually they're fingerprinted. The latest device we have now got is through a Tata thing is a retina scan device as well. And you say, why all this, Ram? I mean, you made a 10,000 rupee loan, you're collecting 100 rupees, or 150 rupees or something a month. What are you going through all this rigmarole? Remember, it is the identity. You've heard of the concept of KYC. Yeah, know your customer. We are fully 100% KYC compliant, folks. We put any bank to shame in terms of our KYC compliance. And the reason you want to do that is the biggest reason for delinquency is when a person is having certain financial difficulties, what they do is they let somebody else, of course it's a group liability concept, so somebody else can pay, but if you do that in 2 cycles, you know that there is a problem with that particular account. The delinquency rate, and I'll say this now rather than later in the presentation, in this business, take a guess. Delinquency rate. So number of customers who don't make their EMI payment on the due date. So it's measured as 1 day past due. Not 30 days, 60, 90. The non-accrual process is a whole different thing for your accounting folks in your group. We can get into that. But I'm talking about what is delinquent is considered 1 day past due beyond the EMI date. So take a wild guess. for general and in fact for the industry as a whole, what is the delinquency rate? I want a hand and a shouted out answer. And be bold and say, yes.
1 to 2%.
1 to 2%. Okay. Any other guesses?
4 to 5%.
4 to 5%. Okay. Any others? I think we're less than 1%. That's an optimist. I like that. So you're in sales, are you? Wonderful. I would say, I mean, the answer is very close to what the young lady said. 1 to 2% is about 1.5. And right now there is a certain cyclical pattern. You know, you find that certain seasons, gold buying seasons, marriage and so on, there seems to be a little stretch out. People say, okay, let me take a little holiday and not pay this EMI now and pay the next month. But as of March 31st, ours was about 80 basis points, 0.8%, which is by any definition, close to what you said, any definition, remarkable. Because the 4 to 5% that the young man said is actually perfectly acceptable in the banking world. I worked 34 years and, you know, sub 5 is, I'm running a damn good business. Sub 3 is great. I'm asking for an extra performance bonus, you know, when I do that. But, yeah, 4 to 5% would be that. So this is what it is, and it is not, it is because there is an early intervention, there's an early reaction to that thing. There is no coercion. There's one of the standard questions we get asked is, do you send out, you know, the muscle men, you know, when it's 10 days past due, to beat up on the customers? No, we don't. Okay, it just doesn't happen. There's a code of, I mean, the RBI again, folks, let me tell you, having returned to India after 27 years, being out and seeing how the regulator, and I'm not getting anything paid by the RBI to say this, it just amazes me how on top of the game the regulator of this country, financial regulator of this country is. So I would say to all of you, you know, take all the press reports you read sometimes about you know, the RBI, you know, people complaining against their rate policies and stuff with a huge pinch of salt, bucket of salt, because they are, I think, one of the most proactive regulators in the world. And the economic recession of 2008 and 9 proved it, right? All of you know, I mean, we had a soft landing as compared to a lot of other countries. Let me move on. One of the things we also do is we use, have you heard of something called Salesforce.com? Yeah. It is, you would have heard of it because 45% market share in the world is the CRM tool. And we are smart, and being Indians, you know, humko bahut smart, right? So we take Salesforce.com and we work with them, and first MFI to use their software, and we have kind of customized it to do an end-to-end processing of all our loans. And I do that also for my enterprise loans. It's amazing what you do. So there's a time stamping and a you know, a step-by-step identification of where an application is, at what stage, what happens, who touched it, who got onto Salesforce and, you know, did what they did. Amazing. We just had Accenture come in and do a complete business process review and suggest. So it's about, you know, the old axiom, you know, don't wait for it to be broken, you know, fix it when it's running. So that's our concept. So we've gone out and got Accenture to come in. Again, companies like Accenture, another major international consulting firm, whom I'm sort of secrecy bound, not to mention their name, came in and did, because it's part of sort of their CSR. And they didn't exactly do pro bono, just to charge us some money, but they did a 4-month work with us in terms of defining our 5-year strategy. So here's a small MFI, and you'll see how small we are in a moment, which is growing leaps and bounds, which is growing the right way, putting all its bricks in order, you know, to build this massive edifice that will happen. Right? So talking about size, okay, lest you can't see it at the back, that's me, okay, right there, at the end of the chart. All right? So I have no shame in saying that, because we are, if you look at the blue bars, I'm sorry again, it's a very small chart. This was the Bandhan I was talking about. This is the West Bengal-based microfinance company, which had, despite everything, all the challenges, ended up with a portfolio, any portfolio of about 1,500. We are about 400 in all, 425. But we literally almost doubled our portfolio last year when, and you'll see in the next chart, when every single other, with the exception of Bandhan, actually degrew. Okay, so this is a chart that I like to show more often, and that's Jalakshmi right at top. Okay. Again, now all you math majors will say, and I know Kailash will say, but Ram, 69% looks great, but you're starting on a small base, right? So we all know the denominator is small in the previous year. You know, the numerator looks great in the following year. Yeah, that's true. But even as an absolute growth, if you just did the math, the 421 minus the 248 shows the growth which, in fact, anything other than Bandhan did not have. So you see the Grameen Financial, Ujjivan, which is a Bangalore-based microfinance company, which is owned and managed by a dear friend of mine. Grama Vidya, which is a Tamil Nadu-based microfinance. Equitas is Tamil Nadu. Again, went from 900 to 700. Again, run by an ex-colleague of mine from DCB. Share, which is an AP, Andhra Pradesh. It's called Share Spurti. You might have heard of it. 3,500 to 1,600. We are talking here in this chart about dispersals. What is dispersals? The number of new loans made to customers in that year. SKS, oops, sorry, I get carried away. SKS went from 7,800 small group loans, and we got to look at individual loans. Because remember, in a small group, what happens is one borrower is guaranteeing the other borrower. Now, when the loan is about up to 30,000 rupees, you don't have a problem guaranteeing her. But when it starts getting larger, you say, wait a minute, you know, I really don't know what her intent is when she paid the loan back. Why should I guarantee? So you found the group structure, you know, which was sort of the basis on which microfinance was created, started falling apart. When it starts falling apart, where do they still go? So you needed to have an avenue. So what we said was we needed to provide a conduit, okay, to provide financing to those customers. That's what micro enterprises are. So we finance urban enterprises of 47% of the 2.6 crores. That's a big number, okay. Share of bank loans, you'll see some of the stats there. I won't spend a lot of time. Essentially, the moral of the story there is banks have been somewhat interested, not really. Again, it's a very busy chart, so I'll get over it. Let's get down to this. So what do we do? Okay, we believe, and working with that international management consultancy firm, who shall remain unnamed, we established that the total demand by 2015 for micro enterprise loans would be 80,000 crores. That's a big number. I had to kind of look at it several times. $16 billion, folks, using current exchange rates. Okay, that's a big number. Again, so I remind my salespeople and credit people this all the time, because I have a pan-India team that works with me, and we have huge goals this year. And I say, don't worry, don't go up, don't be the lender of the last resort, and don't go after that last fish. You know, there's plenty to do. Let's do it the right way, because NPAs or non-performing loans is not a pretty picture. Supply is highly fragmented. Okay, banks are doing it. State Bank of India does some, Bank of Baroda does, and others do this as part of their outreach activity, but nobody really is in it for the long run. So clearly white spaces for Jalakshmi, especially in those states that you see there. For us, it was a natural progression, because as we saw the group structure falling apart, we said we should do this, and it's a financial inclusion imperative. Remember again, the double bottom line I talked about? In fact, let me just throw in this trivia. Now they're talking, the literature is talking about a 4-level bottom line. Just when you thought that you got accustomed to a bottom line and a double bottom line, they're talking about a 4-level bottom line. The other two being the environment, and you heard about that a little bit yesterday, and fourthly, employer of choice. So it's talking about employee health, happiness, motivation, all that, the EQ stuff that you all study about. So that's the fourth bottom line that companies are going to get measured on. So what do we do? We provide, some of you said, Ram, your presentation is lacking in technical depth. Here's a chart on that. We do working capital demand loans. We are an NBFC folks, so we cannot do cash credit lines or overdraft facilities, so we have to do term loans. Okay, we do that for working capital. We do term loans for capex, for purchase of capital equipment. Repayment method is all post-dated checks drawn on their bank accounts. Believe me, 100% of my customers are these tiny enterprises requiring loans up to 10 lakhs. Every single one of them has a bank account. Okay, that's a requirement. We look at banking summation, as we call it, or banking turnover, as one of the key credit criteria. Security, we take a security on the trading assets of the company. We also look for some level of collateral security. By collateral security, I mean something tangible, like real estate. We take gold. It's amazing the number of customers who come in and will offer some gold ornaments and stuff to meet the requirement of about 30–40%. So we do that. And we've just introduced something called the long-term business loan product, which is famously known as a loan against property product in banks, where we will lend to an enterprise against the registered mortgage on a commercial or a residential property. We did that. Okay, so that was very, very quick. What I did was I had a whole bunch of slides on a new strategy we were launching literally the day before I came here to Shillong. Teaches you not to leave your head office for too long, right? Because what happened was there was something called the NIRE Committee Recommendations on Priority Sector. Some of you are interested in that can again look it up. Which was going to set out and define what priority sector lending should be by banks. Just to put it in context, the total bank lending, okay, to businesses in India is slightly north of 30 lakh crores. I can't even put the number of zeros there. Okay, it's 30 followed by 5 followed by 7 zeros. That is the amount, total amount of bank lending, out of which fully 7% of that amount, which comes to about 2.1 lakh crores, was to be targeted for micro enterprises alone. So that was the amount of money every single year that needed to flow to that. That was a pressing recommendation. We built a whole strategy and a game plan around it, how we would become what I call the Intel chip inside any computer. You know, so regardless of what the mainframe, whatever, looked like, you know, we would be the Intel chip inside, was our strategy. And the RBI just announced this circular the day I was traveling here. And what they have done is, I think, bowed to some pressure to say, okay, let's not have that kind of a rigid 7% rule right now for this year. So essentially what I'm saying is there was an opportunity that we saw. We are extremely opportunistic as an organization, constantly looking for ways in which we can, you know, kind of position ourselves as a partner to the larger organization. But that has kind of gone away. But there is a larger 40% rule for private sector that we can still play in, and there are a whole bunch of presentations I have to do to some private sector banks and foreign banks with less than 20 branches in India are going to be treated on par with PSUs. So it's a huge thing for the likes of you know, some banks like even Citi that have more than 20 branches in the country. So we think that there's kind of a burgeoning opportunity there. Kailash, 5 more minutes. I just want to introduce this concept. I don't want to again lecture to you. If you're interested, you find it kind of interesting, take it away, just go to Google and type in the missing middle. And you know, it is, trust me, it is not about you know, an exercise routine, you know, to this thing. It's more about you know, lack of financing worldwide for companies that fall into something called you know, that segment. And this is kind of a schematic depiction of how small businesses, micro and small businesses around the world, find a financial crunch when it comes to access. And guess what? Whenever there's a vacuum, you have some very creative people stepping in to fill the vacuum of lending. And those are your ubiquitous money lenders, where there's absolutely no regulation. I was surprised one day when I was doing some research on this, went to the website and was looking it up, and I just said Money Lenders Association, and sure enough, you know, around the country, money lenders have formed associations. You know, talk about giving themselves a veneer of respectability. So that's one competition that I'll not be nice to. because clearly I think what they provide, obviously more than anything else, is convenience. You know, and the fact that, you know, when you need the money, it's there. But as they say, the price you pay to that piper can be pretty significant. So look this up in the literature. Here are some other charts that I put together. Again, I'm happy to send this presentation to Kailash to share. This is around things like, you know, SMEs as total employment. We don't need to be preaching to the India figure somewhere in here, if you see, right in the middle of the chart. Okay, generates significant amount. In the United States, 8 out of 10 jobs that are created, even today, are in what we call small businesses. So that is in a so-called the largest economy of the world. So it just tells you the power of small. This tells you that by country and income levels, the share of SME contribution. Okay, obviously, no surprise, low-income countries, it's a much higher percentage, 78%. But what is remarkable that even in the so-called high-income countries, it's a very significant number. So please don't think it's the IBMs and the Boeings and you know, the Microsofts and the Googles that are doing it in the US. I mean, you're talking about a myriad number of small business companies, and that get me employed for literally 10 years for my 22 in the US. Doing some wonderful work with them. Contribution to GDP, again, for the economists amongst you, you can see that in low-income countries, unfortunately, it's a very small smidgen, you know, 16%. Look at the high-income countries. So the point is, as the income base in your country increases, the relevance of SME does not diminish. Rather, actually, as the share increases. That's the reason I put that up. So the future in India for SMEs, and that includes folks, things that many of you might want to step out from the portals of this institute and want to do tomorrow, right? You could be entrepreneurs getting out there and don't come to me for the first 2 years, please, because I want you to be in a business and survive for 2 years before I finance you. I'm not an angel investor, but seriously, I think there are tons of institutions that do provide startup capital. Alternatively, we think we are not in that position just yet to do it, because that would be a much higher risk, and there are a number of VCs that do that. But we will be there with you for as you grow and provide. Growth obstacles, again, these are all the ones in red. And I'm sorry again, I apologize to the people in the back who can't read it. I'll read it for you. It says access to finance. That's kind of a pretty large bar, and cost of finance again is a large thing. These are some of the reasons cited, and I believe this is the last one. And again, regardless of the size of the company, okay, the numbers don't vary significantly. I don't think there is statistically significant when you look at this chart between less than 20 employees and over 100 employees. So, a couple of charts on this which I'm going to skip actually. Okay, it's kind of busy, so let's get to this. We'll take a few more questions, and then what I want to do is, Kailash suggested that I should kind of open up and talk a little bit about personal experiences and reflections as to where I've been and in my career and so on. So I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
Ram, I have a question.
Yeah.
I really appreciate Janlakshmi using technology to its max and getting to the customers. But why are you restricting Janlakshmi only to the urban poor? Why aren't we catering to the rural poor of the country? The second question is, when you were making a decision to choose urban poor or rural poor, what was the thought process which firm was taking, and why did you choose urban poor?
Excellent. Okay, so both are really related. Both questions are really related to sort of the urban-rural kind of divide. Now, I'm kind of speaking a little bit for the promoter, right? So I'm a Johnny come lately. I joined 2 years ago. This company, by the way, in terms of vintage, goes back to 2005. That's when the company purchased the urban portfolio of Sangaditra, which was an urban and rural. The simple answer that I've heard Ramesh give to this question, and this gets asked a lot, is he says, I'm a product of an urban environment. I grew up in an urban environment, went to schools in Bangalore, etc., went to Ilani just for, you know, for an engineering degree, then went off to the US, came back, you know, lived in large cities. So what I understand, what I can relate to is urban India, okay? Not to deny that there is a huge population in rural India. The other thing is, and as management students, you'll appreciate this, it's about set out to do what you know you can deliver and do best, right? So when you have a certain amount of resources and you have to choose where you want to put it in, you make your choices. So it was just one of those. It was not a cold-hearted, you know, calculation of where am I going to make more money or where am I going to survive. None of that. This was pure and simple urban. What worked in his favor at the time was Jani Lakshmi was the first pure urban play in microfinance. So whenever you're the leader, whenever you're the first in anything, you know, you as they say, the view never changes unless you're the lead dog. You've heard of that expression. You take the vulnerabilities, but you also get the benefits of, you know, showing the way. So urban was something that everybody kind of did not think about. The question somebody asked earlier, this gentleman here, who said, what's the profile of your customers? I'm glad for that question because it just showed you when I gave you the answer, urban India does not mean that there are no underserved people here. And I use the word again, I don't care, the urban poor, right? It doesn't mean that at all. There is, given the migration of population, okay, people leaving rural areas, semi-rural areas to come to urban shores for livelihood, they don't automatically become wealthy or they have access to you know, banking services. They don't. In fact, they live in what we call urban slums. We use the word and I don't shrink on it. I remember a credit officer that I hired for my business in Chennai went for something called a personal discussion. And she came back and she called me and she said, I'm going to decline this loan. I said, why is that? And she said, sir, the enterprise that you want to lend to is in a slum area. And I said, so Shanti, what's the problem? So tell me the problem. And she couldn't believe that I didn't get it. So she said, it's in a slum area. I said, so do 100% of my customers, the microfinance and the retail financial services side, live. So what makes them, you know, quote unquote, untouchable? They have aspirations just like you and I. They have children that they want to send to schools. They need financing for all of that. Healthcare is an issue. You know, a wedding in the family. You know, in Indian weddings, right? Everybody, if they're distantly related, has to go and give shagun kehte hain na, you know, you got to go and give a certain tofa. I mean, very low. And it's the woman of the family that's left to fend with all these issues. The man is off, you know, not worrying about it, but just wants to make sure that when he goes to that wedding, that the gift that's given is worthy of our stature. I mean, you know, we have these notions. So there is need. So there's an urban need. On the enterprise side, I don't need to say anything. It's 47%. That's where the enterprises are set up. And that's the reason. And could we go rural tomorrow? Absolutely, we could. But I'll tell you that there are a bunch of microfinance companies, Bandhan, the SKS, Ujjivans. Ujjivan is also a lot like us. They're more urban. There's Share, who are doing an excellent job of lending to rural, you know, underserved. So I think that there is enough of scope for a number of players, like Professor Bora, who taught me marketing. Again, RIP, he's no more. Taught us market segmentation, right? We all learned this thing. The first thing you've done is you segment your market and you say, where are your white spaces or your opportunities? So I would say never is never. Never is a bad word, but we might, but not for a bit. I think we would probably want to be a bank sooner than we want to just get into rules right now. And we think that we are positioning ourselves with our technology. That's your start of your question. Technology, employees, people, processes, compliance, audit procedures, code of conduct. I mean, if you come and sit in on a Tuesday management meetings, and my wife knows this because Tuesday is the day that I'm hyper to the core because I have to leave and be there at 9 in the morning, come what may, because we have a management meeting that's unbelievable in terms of, forward-looking and where we want to be. Because for a bunch of us, it is our last hurrah in financial services. So we want to leave it with a legacy that I think we can all be proud of. So that's a long answer to a short question.
Good evening, Mr. Ram.
Good evening.
My question is related to the enterprise financial services.
Good.
Basically, we have commercial banks operating under the scheme called the Credit Guarantee Fund Trust for Micro and Small Enterprises, wherein they could give collateral-free loans. So, what kind of competition does an urban microfinance face in terms of giving loans to the micro and small enterprises with the banks, because their rates are also lower compared to the MFIs, and their outreach is higher in urban areas compared to rural areas. So what kind of challenges has an urban microfinance face?
I'll go back to my earlier point about the demand side of the picture being so big that yes, there's competition, but really it's not, there's enough room for a number of players. You raised what I call a little bit of a matter of personal regret for me about CGT MSC, which you just mentioned. As an NBFC, I'm not entitled for coverage under CGT MSC. Okay, it's only extended to, as you know, to banks. And whereby you can give for some of you are not aware of what she's talking about, but you can give an unsecured loan. In fact, you're expected to not take any security for a loan up to 5 lakhs, which you can provide, and you have the fallback of a government guarantee, if you will, provided through CGT MSC, which is a wing of SIDBI. And if you've heard SIDBI, right? Small Industrial Development Bank of India, which is financed by the government of India. So, so for me, right away, starting off, I'm playing this game with one hand slightly tied behind my back. So it puts me at a disadvantage. So what do? A lot of my work, and part of the reason I honestly also accepted coming here and so on, is the more audience we can get out and speak to and talk about the work we're doing, not just me, but other microfinance institutions and other lenders to micro enterprises, is because we need to do what I call advocacy. Okay, we need to be advocates for the cause, and we need to get the message out. And I have gone and met SIDBI numerous times, gone to Lucknow, and met them on their home turf, SMF office there. I've gone to Delhi several times, I've gone to Mumbai and met. And a lot of work I do is, this thing is to go out and meet various regulatory bodies like this and talk to them about what we're doing and say, the color of my money is just as good as anybody else, and look at my processes, look at the credit discipline and skills I bring, look at my portfolio, and if I can do this and I'm lending to so many people and enterprises, why don't you extend to me the cover of CGT so that I can do unsecured lending. So far it hasn't worked, but there is, as I say, light at the end of the tunnel, and I hope that will happen. So yes, banks, if they choose to come and operate in my turf, they will blow me over. I will not sit here and say that, I'm so special that we have something very special. Although our customers tell us that when it comes to what is called in the industry CAT, you know what CAT means? Turnaround time. Okay, you hear this a lot in, I learned a lot of acronyms when I came back to India. CAT is one of them, right? Turnaround time. So when you have the right turnaround time, convenience, and a product that is, customized for your customers, you get your share of customers. The market is very, very big. But I would welcome many of these banks. So one of the things we are launching is partnerships with banks. So we are saying, you be the funder, financier, you provide the money, we will be your last mile. So we'll go out and provide you the connectivity, we'll provide the servicing. So I'll do that. I call it the managed portfolio approach. I will do that, but I'll also originate from my own book. Because I want to, that's what I want to do as a social organization. Right? Other questions on this?
Hello, sir. I have a question. Recently I came across a microfinance institute in Pakistan that's called Akuwa. And what's so special about this MFI is that it lends its borrowers the loan at no interest rate. And that it has now 63085 borrowers and 99.85% of loan recovery. and nearly 10 NGOs have replicated this model. My question to you is, how tough is it to replicate this model in India? On the same lines, what are the prospects of Islamic microfinance in India? My second question is, what are the prospects of peer-to-peer lending in India? These two questions, sir.
Peer-to-peer lending. Okay, that's an interesting concept. The first one, I think you sort of answered the question yourself. It is the concept of Islamic banking, which we have known for a long time. I did 5 years of my stint was in the National Bank of Bahrain, at the time when there were huge projects going on in UAE, in Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. So we financed a lot of big projects there. But Islamic banking was then in its infancy. The concept there is very simple. While you don't charge interest, which is under the Islamic code forbidden, what you do is something called profit sharing. So you are an equity investor in the company that you're financing, and essentially you take a share of the profits that are generated by that company come to you as in the form of dividends. In my experience, honestly, when it comes down to the rate at which you earn, it's really no different to rate of interest that you earn on the loan. Okay, so it is, you call it by a different name. I'm not trying to say that Islamic banking doesn't have other aspects to it. I'm not a big, an expert on that field. Your question really was, it's there in Pakistan, what are the chances of it being replicated in India? I would think not, quite honestly, because I look at how far Islamic banking per se has made inroads into India, and I would say it's I don't know the exact percentage, but I think it's de minimis. So I don't think it's large. So I would think in microfinance it would not happen. I would also tell you that a large number of customers that we deal with are women of of the Islamic faith, or we lend in Muslim-dominated areas. They are not negative areas or profiles by any stretch. We do the same amount of due diligence and we lend there. So, and there we do it just the way we do the rest of the banking. So if I were to guess, and you're asking me to give you an opinion as to, do you think the adoption? I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Because I don't think it's a way. What is more likely to happen, you talked about peer-to-peer lending. And by that I'm trying to interpret it. Can you give me a specific? Because I think I know what you're talking about, but I'd rather you tell me. Give me a specific.
Sir, I know about an organization, Ramdas, sir, wherein you have the investor's profile on the website, and that if they have a requirement of, say, 200 rupees for some kind of investment they want to do, then they have a profile, and if, say, I'm an investor, I visit that profile, I visit that website, I come across this profile, I think I can invest in this for this man. I'll, from my account, give 200 rupees. So that's kind of peer-to-peer lending.
Absolutely.
That's what I've come across.
Absolutely. I think it already happens. You mentioned one example. I think there are several such cases. Without getting into the whole area of even funds like Catamaran and others, the Asim Premji Foundation thing, where it's not really the peer-to-peer, but again, it is where they set aside a corpus for on-lending and lending directly to these micro-enterprises. It happens. Again, I think it is, earlier today we were at this waterfall called the Seven Sisters, right? So ultimately when you look at it, it all flows into that one large gushing stream. So that large waterfall there is perhaps microfinance, but I think there's a lot of smaller falls that all get in there. And my personal feeling about this is more the merrier. I mean, whatever thing works in certain areas, cooperatives, we don't chip. I mean, let me just talk about a little bit about chit funds. You all have heard of Sri Ram's City Union? It's a huge company. Even if I could, I would tell you here, I would confess, if I could get one Sri Ram City Union credit guy, if I could headhunt him or her to come and work for me, I would give anything. I mean, they're an amazing company. Okay, their delinquency rates are next to nothing, and the reason is that they incubate all their micro enterprise customers in their chit fund business. So they're lending to the third or fourth loan to the chit fund customers. So a chit fund is pretty much similar to what you're talking about, where people in a group who don't have an immediate need are putting money in and then the person who needs it takes it out and repays it. I mean, it's a great concept. I mean, this is the Indian, what's that word? Jugaad, right? So
we have time for just one last question.
One last question, and then okay.
So my
As I recall, you asked a question already, so you got to pay the compeer $100. No, I'm just joking. Please ask your question.
So my question is not related to the microfinance industry. You have been in the financial sector for more than 30 years, so I'm asking you this question. From the last 3 or 4 months, we are hearing about the Libor scandal, the HSBC, Citibank, Barclays. Every major financial institution has some negative side. So where are all the ethics? Why do they take huge amounts of risk and create losses?
You know, please. Libor was. I just go back. I was just telling my son who's off to do his MBA. In a month's time, and we were reading about the crisis. And he's an IT information systems guy. So he was asking me about Libor. He was trying to explain this a little bit. He thinks his banking father knows all the answers. But I remember when it was very simple. And but you know the whole thing about the genesis of the crisis. There's some. The whole concept of Libor is that it's a market-determined rate, but it's also a reference rate. What a reference rate means that it's set every day by a panel of reference banks, okay, who have this inordinate amount of clout. But for the longest time, folks, I've been in banking 30 years, as you said. You were kind, it's a little longer. But for all that time, Libor was there. And it worked like a dream. We always quoted off Libor. Even prime rate in the US is linked to Libor. It was historically 200 basis points above, Libor. So Libor is something that it's like onions. But also when we know the rigging of prices of onions, that happens. People don't like it. Otherwise, you just buy onions without even thinking about what the price of onions is. Okay, giving you a home example, right? So Libor is like that. But you're right. Your question contained the answer. You said the ethics. And that's really what at the core. That is at the core of what it is. Famously, Gecko, you saw a movie called Wall Street a long time ago, yeah? Michael Douglas. He was amazing, wasn't it? He uses this famous line, greed, right? He used the word greed. I mean, that's essentially what it comes to. And I think, and this is my personal opinion, it's not as clearly as Janlakshmi or anything else. I think it is the feeling, not the feeling, or the conviction that I will get away with this. I think that is at the heart of every single major scandal that has hit the financial services industry from the start. If you think about it. Yes, the motive could be greed. The motive could be a little bit of, let's try this, let's do this one. But like with everything else, insider trading, which again has been on all of our reading minds lately, and all of that, it is this feeling of infallibility that I'm so good at something, I've done this for so long, and I'm a name, I have a brand, right? I'm Barclays, I'm JP Morgan, right? That it just gives you this veneer of infallibility, which is not true. It's the emperor's new clothes. So I feel it is that. It is not so much the excesses, but people feel that, what the heck, they can get away. And, the regulators are really dumb. And they're not. As I've said repeatedly, there's one thing you take away from this session is, we have a bunch of bright minds, very bright minds sitting in positions of power. And thank God we do. And many of those minds, for the women in the audience, are women. So you can feel really proud, So what that would be my answer. I don't think there was anything, other than that. And just desserts. The nice thing today is that there is no hiding. When you do something like this, there's a price to pay, and your shareholders make you pay the ultimate price. Okay, it happened with Enron, it happened with Lehman, if you want to use some of the examples in the West. It happened with this computer company here in India. Ultimately, you get your just desserts. But this is not about model. I'm not here to talk about model science. although that is part of my mind. I want to leave you with 3 words, magical words, which I learned when I was going through something called moral rearmament, which many of you, I bet, if you know about this, that means you're in the wrong generation. Okay, this was a movement where you learn certain basic core values. So I think it comes down to values, comes down to ethics, and a little bit of greed. As I said, the feeling that you're above the law. You can't do much. It's unfortunate. These are very bright people. I don't think they are born criminals. I don't think there is this criminal intent or anything like that. But it is just that, what the heck, I can't be, tainted by this. Unfortunately, you do, and you pay the ultimate price. And actually, that's a nice segue, if I might, to a discussion on a little bit on values. And I think the power of the podium, the fact that I'm standing up here and you guys are sitting down there makes me somehow feel superior, and I can give you these words of wisdom. All I would say is a couple of things that I have noticed, because I was out of the country for a long time, very active, making a life in a new country, in a very difficult environment, where, let me tell you, the thing that, based on my background and privilege, a privileged background, in terms of education, I went to some of the best schools. I had the fortune of going to Delhi School of Economics, being taught by giants. We were talking earlier today about some of the names, and when I mentioned them, I still kind of, I get a little overawed. We had people like Manmohan Singh, A.K. Sen, Shukumar Chakravarti, we had people like K.N. Raj, who's developmental economics guru, people like that, Dr. Roy Chaudhary, who wrote the book, if you will, on transportation economics. If any of you get into logistics and things like that, Dr. books is, Professor Roy Chaudhary's books. And then going on to IIM and being taught by, C.K. Prahlad and, Rangarajan, and people like that. It just, I'm very privileged. So you graduate, and I'm looking at all of you, and regardless of the background, you're here in the portals of IIM Shillong, this beautiful surroundings, and you're going to be graduating, some of you, and a portion of you will be in a year's time. And you are entitled, in a sense, to think that you're privileged. So you come out of this thinking that you're entitled to certain things. And I thought I was entitled. And I worked for 10 years in a major bank. My first job out of campus was with Bank of America. And I was in Calcutta, and then I was in the Philippines. Got selected to go on an operations research assignment with my newly wedded bride. I took her and we went off 7 days after we got married to go to Manila and build a life there. And so you came back, and the first ground reality was Calcutta and what they called the brownouts those days. It was actually blackouts. There was no power, very little. Tough days in terms of electricity and all that stuff. It was not in the private hands then by the Tatas. So drove me one fine day. Somebody came and said, "Would you like to come and do a job in the Middle East?" And I said, "What? That's great. No taxes, right? The first thing that goes through your mind." So no taxes, and we can finally afford to buy a car, because my wife would tell you for the longest time, every weekend we'd go car shopping, and we would come back saying we can either afford to buy the car and park it in the garage, or pay for the gas and not have a car. We can't do both, and we were too proud to ask our respective parents for help to do that. So I said finally we can go to the Middle East in Bahrain and buy a car. So that's what it was, but we went off there, did some fabulous banking work. I mean, it was the El Dorado, it was a cutting edge, McKenna's gold days of banking, because we were financing huge projects, water, reverse osmosis plants in Saudi Arabia, iron ore pelletizing. We were getting iron ore from Kudremukh, and there was a pelletizing plant called Arab Iron and Steel. We were sending steel back, it's fantastic. We were financing all this. Suddenly, as a banker, I felt that I was suddenly an expert in all these industries. That's how bankers feel, You know a little bit about every little thing. You think you're an expert. So I did that for 5 years. It was fantastic. And so here was a period of entitlement and privilege that extended for 10 years beyond graduation. So I had, gone to the best schools, had sort of the best jobs, had a good-looking wife, all of that. And then, it turned out that we needed to go to the US. We needed to. We didn't want to. Okay, so whole difference. Needed to to pursue educational opportunities for a special needs son. So we said, let's go. So this was when reality hit, and you apply for jobs, and people, your contacts help you, and so on. And on your own steam, you go for an interview. Nobody pays. Those days at least they didn't. And you went there, and you go for the interview, and people say, so where did you go to school, right? In the US, when they say where did you go to school, you all know this, right? They're talking about where did you go to college. So they're not talking about your high school. So where did you go to school? Which is the first thing I had to learn. I didn't have the same Kendriya Vidyalaya, Chennai. So I said very proudly, IIM Ahmedabad. And I said, and so where's that? So first ground reality, brings you down one peg, right? Reduces you, all right? You say, oh, okay. Then of course they ask you, and Americans are very disingenuous. They're very honest in a way, but sometimes they come across in their interactions as being rude for that reason, but it's not. It's just plain curiosity. And like the Brits, they will voice it. And they said, so when did you learn to speak English? So you kind of look at them and say, is this a serious question? Why is he asking me this? This is a senior officer of the bank. I remember his name. And I said, well, first thing very quickly you learn is you don't say sir. So you say, call me Tim. He says, okay. I said, okay. This time I meant it when I called him Tim, because I was getting a little angry. And I said, well, I learned it in India. He said, oh, I thought you went to school in the US or... I said, no. I said, it's literally my first week in the United States, never been here. So that was like a shocker for him, because in his view, all the Indians he had met, right, had come there for higher education or come to do jobs and on their H1 visas, H1B, and so on, and so then I would, just to add a little salt to the thing, I would always say, and Christianity is as old as Jesus Christ in India. And that would stop them in their tracks. You've got to make sure that you're talking to a Christian. Because there are a lot of people of the Jewish faith and so on. But you use that line and you say, what do you mean? They think that you're joking, right? Then you say, St. Thomas, who was one of the apostles of Christ, one of the 12 apostles, right, is buried in St. Thomas Mount, which was about less than a kilometer from where I went to school in Chennai, in Madras, in South India. And that's a true story. I'm not making this up. So when you say things like this, you suddenly start seeing yourself early on as some kind of a flag bearer and an ambassador for all Indians. Nobody gave me that role. Nobody said, Ram, we appoint you herewith as India's ambassador extraordinaire. But you do, folks, let me tell you. You leave the shores of this country, regardless of how eternally divisive we try to be, and so on, and we are, constantly debating each other. The moment you leave the shores, somehow you feel that you've dawned. That's why I love the ads. As you can see, I mentioned a lot about ads, right? Advertising management was one of the courses I scored very highly in. Wish I'd gone there rather than Mark. Thank you. Anyway. So one of the ads that they do for the Indian Olympic team now, right? Jwala Gutta says, I'm an Olympian, but I'm first in India. That whole identity thing. It just kind of, it's a cloak that you wear and comes upon you. Nobody anoints you, but you do it. And so that was the start. So that was the start of what I call the feeling of entitlement being slowly reduced. Then the first day on the job, happened to be in Manhattan, living in New Jersey, right? You get on this train, you understand the train schedules, and you're very conscious. You're standing on what they call the track, which is the platform, waiting for the train. And invariably that damn thing comes absolutely on time. So you've gotten there 2 minutes thinking that just minute and name. It pulls in. And you get on and you're extremely self-conscious. You're saying, am I wearing the right shoes? Is it properly polished? And are even the lapels of your jacket, are they the right, is it the in thing, or am I wearing all that thoughts are going through your head. You're very, very self-conscious. and you get into this train, it lets you off into Manhattan, and you get on something called the Path, which is like a subway. And trust me guys, there are hundreds of people who come in, but only as it happens in Manhattan. Two people could be standing literally facing each other with about 6 inches separating you, but you create your own little space, and you never look the other person in the eye, and I might be looking at a speck on your thing or whatever. Throughout the journey, you don't make eye contact. That is creating your little space and staying within that space. That because I learned that in a very crowded environment, you need to have your own. But India mein aisa nahi hai, you look at the other guy, check him out, or check her out. Sorry, I don't mention. Okay, so that's the next thing. That nobody is looking at you. My God, I'm wearing this really nice suit. I think the tie is sharp, and I'm Indian. For heaven's sake, everybody around is blonde and blue-eyed, or whatever, African American, and I'm looking different. I feel different. Why the hell are people not looking at me? Guess what? The ultimate leveler. It is Manhattan and most parts, I would say Midwest. If you go to a smaller town, you go, not Atlanta, that's a bad example, maybe Boise, Idaho or something like that. Denver, people might look at you. Not in Manhattan, they just don't care. I mean, and then you get on these escalators that are, literally 1,000 people are going up. Again, same thing, people ignore you. And the worst thing is, you stop it and your wife has said, I can't, you're leaving too early for work, can't get you breakfast. So, Manhattan delis. You all know the delis, right? Where you get sandwiches. So you go there, that's the ultimate thing. You want to go and be a New Yorker and you want to order a sandwich and a coffee. You want to carry it in a brown bag. It's a very New Yorky thing to do, and you blend, right? So people had told me that. So I said, chalo, you go to the deli. I picked Manhattan deli, You go in there, there are a bunch of people, mostly Italians, not to be racist, but that's how they are. Or people, the Polish, and they're all there. And you step up there, and he doesn't even kind of look at you, he knows your presence. And he said, what's your order? And you are still looking at that board at the back, which has got, 20 different types of, 200 types of sandwiches. It's got, rye, wheat, it's got a hard roll, it's got Kaiser bun, I mean, you name it. And then it's got, do you hold the mayo, or do you put it on? Do you want your eggs white only, or, it's incredible. And the thing is, you feel pressured. I've not felt more pressured in a job interview. I'm up there, and I have to perform. And it's not smiling, friendly faces like I see here, you're encouraging me, laughing at my stupid jokes and everything. No, this guy means business because, you know what? You're holding up the traffic. Then he says, and that's what, you're thinking that, and he says, you're holding up the traffic, boss. Like step aside. Or, as you decide what you want to have. And then you say, oh God. Then you end up ordering what you absolutely don't want to eat because it's simple. And you heard the next guy, or, say it. But you've got to say it with a certain New York tang because he knows it. That is when he knows you're not a native. And then he looks it. So you get noticed by the people you don't want to get noticed for the wrong reasons. That's another step that comes up. Then you go in and you sit in, you go to a meeting and you're all nicely, and you've got this, you all heard the concept of CP, right? You still have CP here? In this day and age, we used to do CP, class participation. CP के होता है ना? हम लोगों का ready हो रहा है इसके बाद CP. हम तो बहुत CP करते थे. We used to do something called case CP. Have you heard of case CP? You do cases, right? So you read the case just about 10 minutes before you get to class. And then you quickly read it and you raise your hand. The professor is very impressed. I was telling Jyoti Bhai that in IIM, because you sit in the stadium seating initially till the professors get to know your name, they're looking at a picture on a card. And they say, okay, Mr. Ramdas. They call on you. Then you have to sit up and do your CP, right? So you say, sir, the facts of the case are. So you reproduce what is said in the case. And he said, okay, ठीक है. Okay, fine. Thank you, Mr. Ramdas is very kindly for assuming that nobody else has read the case. he has presented the case. वो mark कर लेता, you know, he would mark on the thing. Okay, ठीक है. थोड़ा सा class participation हो गया. You feel okay for the next हफ्ता. So, no questions on my grades at IIM Ahmedabad. Needless to say, I was not a gold medalist. In fact, my gold medalist friend is great, doing great. He's the chief secretary of the government of UP. You know, I mean, I was telling Jyoti, you know, when you get to my age, you either are famous yourself or you know a bunch of people around you who are famous. And in my case, it's the latter. And you know, I know them all. I've got people in government, and so as they say, I know them. The question is, would they, you know, take my call? That's a whole different story. But you know, being out of the country for 27 years, I just came back and I felt this is a country that's, my God, so connected. It's like a global village, right? Everybody knows everybody. You mentioned some names, and now it's taken me about 3.5, 4 years to start making the connection. I felt very proud yesterday when Jyoti mentioned SR, and I said, ABG Shipyard. And I think he was also somewhat impressed. He said, yeah, that's one of our group companies. Not one of their bigger ones, but, you know, so I've now started making the connection also with people, promoters, people who've been there. That's one thing, you know, guys, LinkedIn is a wonderful thing, right? And I don't know, for some reason I accepted this invitation to come and speak here. I immediately get a LinkedIn invitation from somebody who wants me to be part of a speaking forum in Bangalore at various MBA schools. So you might have started me off on a different career. So thank you. So because Dhanlakshmi is looking to kind of retire me at this stage. So those are some of my personal observations. But the point I'm trying to make is, you're all going to step out of a certain cocoon, a nice, enabling environment. Trust me, as much as you think you're having a hard time here, you're not. Once you get out into what we call, the old people call the real world, you're going to find all kinds of dismissive attitudes, people with a certain predisposition towards MBAs, particularly MBAs from IIMs. You're considered the privileged lot. You know, you guys really, you know, did earn it. Somehow got lucky. You know, there's that feeling. Trust me, it's going to happen. But it is about prove. I mean, the other thing is prove yourself. Let me see, you know. And these are going to come from certain really hardcore management types who've been in the organization for 20 years, 25 years. Nothing wrong with it. They're great, but hey, that's going to be your real test. So networking, having a sense of being a learner. Again, my colleague talked about it yesterday. Being a constant learner. You don't ever stop learning. And it's a cliche, but you know, trust me, there's truth to that. Like I am with microfinance and other things. So there's a lot that can happen. Life is a wonderful, wonderful thing. It gives you second opportunities in many ways. I do believe that, you know, and the second innings, as they say, can be wonderful. I've become a keen follower of cricket again, having come back to India. I love it. I'm following, you know, what's happening. So open yourselves up to great opportunities. We were at the Ramakrishna mission earlier today, looking at Swami Vivekananda's thing. And I remember one of my early declamation competitions that I went as part of Central School, came the other to Delhi, was on Swami Vivekananda's speech. Taught me a lot. And I just want to sort of end on one note. I want to talk about certain what I call misses in life, that you can look back and hindsight is always 20/20, and you can say, oh, I missed, you know. And hopefully at your age, you haven't had too many of those episodes, and I hope for you that you have few of them. But I can look back, and even amongst the so-called thing that you put on your resume or on your CV, like Ram was a 2-time Rhodes finalist. The subtext to that is Ram did not win the Rhodes Scholarship. Okay, so I call that a miss. But that's a miss, but you still take away something from it. I can think of several such aspects in my career where I would, at that point in time, see it as a missed opportunity. And it can absolutely dampen you, it can demoralize you. But truly, folks, when you look back, trust me, with the hindsight, benefit of hindsight and time, you can't, you see it for what it is. I love a little analogy, a story, a ditty that was said to me once. If you take a little, try this next time you step out in the daylight, a small gravel, piece of stone, tiny one, doesn't have to be really large. Take it, pick it up and put it very close to your eye. I bet you can't see anything other than that little stone. Okay? But when you hold it a little further away from your eye, you see it for what it is, a mere little stone. So all I say to you is, treat your quote-unquote misses or little missed opportunities as just that little piece of gravel. At that moment, I'm not going to sit here and stand here and say that it's not going to disappoint you. It will. But don't let it be your defining moment, okay? Because then, trust me, you'll get plenty of second opportunities to make a nice first impression. So, good luck to all of you. I think it's great. It's a great school of learning. I think we were talking a lot today about this generation of Indians. I don't consider you Indians at all. I think you're world citizens. I truly believe that. I think you guys are, you lack the baggage of a lot of our generation. I'm not that old, but still, I think I can say we do have that. We did have baggage. The quotation of the Pakistan example, God bless, I hope there's more. I personally hope that the Aman Ki Asha thing just, takes off. I love things like avaz.org. Have you guys heard about it? And the online petition. I love everything that's happening in today's India and today's world. I think there's plenty of opportunity. A couple of things, as I said, don't feel too privileged and entitled because they're going to be dampened. The second thing is, you've got to, one of the things that helped me survive in the US was that question that irritated me when it was first asked, and consistently for the first couple of years was, how come you speak English so well? And I would take it as an affront initially and say, what do you mean? There are plenty of Indians who can speak English well, and we are well-bred, we are educated. We don't have to have gone to Britain to have done that. We can do this. But then you think about it and say, they're actually paying you a compliment. Because when people can understand you, and you can emote, and you can articulate yourself, well, you capture an audience, right? That's what there is to it. So don't feel shy about joining things like, I don't know, something called Toastmaster Club is still around. Join, get into speaking engagements. My colleague was yesterday speaking was saying, he forced himself to just get up in gatherings like this and ask a question. I was like, a lot of you who had a good question, but never asked it when somebody else asked it, said, I had that question. Well, who are you saying that to? You're telling yourself. But you could have been the one to raise the hand and ask the question, at the risk of sounding a little silly, right? Put yourself out. Be that risk taker. It doesn't mean go and bet on horses or, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about put yourself a little outside your comfort zone. You all define your comfort zone, whatever it is. I had a couple of parables given that amount of time, and I'm sure you've all heard about it. Big rocks, yeah? Stephen Covey's. Many of you have heard that? Take a jar, put rocks in, unless you get the big mouth, so you all heard it, so I'm not going to read it. But that again is something I want to say. There was a question yesterday, the last question as I recall was, how do you, when you're conflicted, what do you do in a certain situation? And I would say, define your big rocks. Define what your core things are. Is it working in a social enterprise? Is it following the Morgan Stanley? Hey, don't be apologetic. Don't be apologetic. I mean, what you want to do. Get into a career in photography management. I mean, my son's colleague from Hong Kong, father manages the single largest bespoke tailors, you know, the custom tailoring house in Hong Kong. Got an IS degree from Carnegie Mellon. He went back and is working for his father. He set up the website and the whole, what they call the, what's it, supply chain and all that. I don't want to get into areas I can't speak about. But really that whole end-to-end IT enablement of the business for his dad, he set it up so wonderfully well. So I get these reminders about when they're going to be in town to do this, you know. And fine, that was passion. He didn't let the fact that he went to CMU and got so-called a degree in information systems lead him to believe that he had to work at, you know, at Bain or, you know, whatever, Oracle or whatever. So it is, so put yourself out. I transitioned from a physics, chemistry, mathematics background as a Cambridge with the other student to you know, economics. And probably, so because, you know, I wouldn't have made the cut, I think, you know, those days in following the science route. But you have to get out. I got out of my comfort zone thanks to my dad. And that's what you do. So you take those opportunities. But hey, have fun. You get this once, so enjoy the rest of, for PGP 11, hey, enjoy the rest of the months, because this ain't coming back, as they say. Okay, the real world awaits you with dagger claws out there. And for PGP 12, I mean, you're on a good wicket. Take your time, enjoy the campus. You'll probably move to the new campus by then. Have great fun and stay in touch with each other. And, that's the other parable I wanted to share about the angel bricklayer. The power of networking. If there's one thing I want to leave finally with you is amazing. I never thought it was that great because, you know, I said, you get your job because, you know, you're good. You walk in, you know, you can ace any interview and people realize what you have. Folks, it doesn't work that way. People hire people they know. So network like crazy, you know, and do it with a proper attitude. Not that, you know, I want to do this because which matlab hai isme, you know what I mean? It's got to come naturally. Otherwise, people see through your efforts. So